Thanks for coming. This is actually my first talk ever. The key thing about this is we all deal with some level of IDS. If you have anything monitoring a network, if you have anything that's actually spitting results to you across varieties of your network, it's a form of IDS. And the problem with IDS is we don't actually know how to start the conversation. So part of this is I'm going to be saying about how I ran into this and some of where my successes and failures came from. Well, as all good stories started, you have to question where it started. And to really frame the question, we need to look at what IDSs actually matter. Well, those IDSs cost time, they cost money, and they cost sanity. We do not have time to read everything this thing spits out. And I found this out the hard way. A friend of mine called me because this all started with a phone call and a really, really angry PowerPoint, apparently. And he called me because, stop that. He's called me because he was getting, oh, come on. He was getting constant problems with just being slammed with, oh, let me change this up a little bit. Okay. Sorry about that. He called me. He was getting just buried by emails. This is a small shop. This is a shop that, what is it doing? This is a shop that only runs with a 10-person IT staff. That 10-person IT staff, I do very much apologize. Why is it auto going? Okay. The 10-person IT staff was getting on the order of about 20,000 emails just to the IT staff. And there's the additional CFO and CIO were getting an additional 4,000 emails. That's all generated from roughly 2,000 events in an IDS for a IT team that's already stretched. When this is happening, that mushroom cloud that's laughing at you is the only thing management sees. So my friend is going insane at this point, and all his boss is seeing is an insane man sitting in the basement with a big pile of money on fire because all the work that that company has been doing for the last 6 months, you know, working with customers, talking with resources, working with the people in their industry is literally going up in flames. No one's getting paid. No one's actually making anything. And he's sitting in the basement going, the world's on fire, the world's on fire. And he's waving around, there's a threat, there's a threat, there's a threat. So how do we change this conversation? We have to look at what an IDS is. An IDS, you start with data. That data starts with silos. You have your various inputs. You have external monitors. You have Active Directory monitors. You have your antivirus usually tied in. You have angry PowerPoints occasionally. And you go from those data sources and you have to make them searchable. And that's where indexers come in. A lot of IDSs actually use similar indexers, so I kind of put that as a separate thing. And then you have your IDS. Your IDS is your pattern machine. It looks for patterns of behavior. It looks for patterns of software. It looks for patterns of what's going on in the network, both from a fingerprint point of view and a behavior point of view. Now, the next question is after we get 20,000 responses, what does it break down to? Because we can't bite this apple in one chew, so this is what we ended up with. We're ended up with tons of external noise. No one has any idea where it's coming from. We have web services there going off like firecrackers. And we have just random login failures from people that haven't been at the company for 6-9 months. But there's 2,400 incidences in this one-day snapshot. Who here can read 2,400 incidences and logs attached to it? Darn, I was hoping I'd find someone that could do that, because I know I can't. I don't want to. So where did we start? First off, don't panic. That's the one thing I walked in that fixed the most things. It's don't panic. We had to actually take the chaos and make it work for us. So we looked at one thing first. And that first thing was the external traffic. That external traffic, we found one type of incident, and one type of incident alone, that caused 24.5% of the actual issues. No one bothered to load the external pattern for the IP phone server and the external ports. So you ended up with this block of about 600 alerts going to 12 people every day. It was horrendous, and people are losing their minds. Now, at this point, people love me because now they can access their email again. Because in order to find this, I actually had to argue with the lawyer to have them stop sending the emails. Why the lawyer loved the emails, I don't know. But it was all about framing that question so that the company can still function. Then we looked at web services. Web services, again, this was just bad coding in a few key spots. We're talking an hour work here, an hour work there, and suddenly half the issues go away. Who's here loves unsanitized records? They did. And suddenly, half the issues go away. This continues on, so we go down from about 2,400 in one day in our snapshot to a little over 1,300. So now that we actually understand what we are actually facing, we need to look at what wrenches we have to take apart this engine and put it back together, because obviously it's not working. We have a 10-person IT staff, which I mentioned earlier, and if we don't want to kill them, we need to look at how many hours are working. Because who here loves working an 80-hour week? Sorry, slides are acting up. I don't know why. Those 400 hours a week are critical. Because when you take those and actually look at what cost we have to work with, that cost comes down to man hours. The average pay was about 78K. So we have a really good, consistent pool to work with on there. I swear this PowerPoint was not doing this last night. At which point, if you go to USA.gov and you actually look at mandated benefits, the percentage works out for about 78K. You're dealing with about 38K worth of benefits. Now, the supplemental benefits like laptops, training, extra PTO, stuff like that, that's where you're going to get the most variation per company. They were fairly cheap, so they only did 7K per person, which if you're dealing with critical staff, I actually suggested they did more, but that's not really what I was there for. And if you actually do the math, it works out to about $61.63 per hour. The lesson here is you can actually put a price and actually talk with your owners and say, hey, this is what this is running. Let's actually walk in this with eyes open. So now we know what the cost is per man hour. How much do we want to spend? In most of my experience, if a company is spending under 5%, there's not really a lot you can do with them because you're running into situations where you don't have that buy-in. If you don't have that buy-in, you can put all the you can lock all the doors, but they're just going to unlock them, so save yourself a lot of trouble. And at 25%, there is something to be said for not being paranoid, even in our industry. Too many people are, and if you're stopping a business from functioning, like a email load that is literally cooking the Exchange server, there's something wrong. So in this case, they wanted about 20%, which is a good middle of the road for what they were actually doing. And so that equates to about 60 hours a day and about 80 hours a week. With those hours, we need some structure. That structure is critical. That structure is what makes IDSs work. Programmers don't just throw random code. And the other thing is the reason I was called was 2,000 alerts today generating 24,000 emails. Those 24,000 emails was crippling a company. If your company cannot function, they cannot pay you. And the company just about found that out firsthand. So what do we go to from that? Do we look at how to move forward? Do we give them structure? Do we just send out memos saying, keep going? Because I know I love those from my boss where he gives me nothing to work with. So let's give him something to work with. We have our basic IDS structure. And we actually have a procedure. This procedure actually worked. But it has some limitations. Some IDXs have the ability to do a second check. If your IDS has that, use it. It gives you a way of making more stringent rules that match the failures and successes of your environment. Then you have a human check, which now we're actually saying this as a priority. This isn't something that happens accidentally. This is not something where, oh wow, he's worked 8 hours. Maybe you can work another 10 and read that. And then you actually have a procedure for crisis control. Those crisis controls vary per company. You have to make that your own. If you're in a company that deals with medical, you actually have to have reporting built into your crisis management. You have to have the notifications built in for the right people to take the right steps. And then you have, let's make life easier and clear away the garbage with those changing of rule sets. Rule sets can be firewall, IDS, Active Directory, group policy, doesn't matter. The question is, are you making less work for tomorrow? So we're still at about 13,000. How do we dig out of the hole? First thing is, you don't look at a week at a time, you start day one, because they're frustrated. Next thing is, we didn't take a bite of the entire apple. We just looked at, where is it you're having trouble? Where is it that keeps you up at night? For them, it was the external interface. They're still freaked out that a third of their incidences were external. So I said, let's start there. In the first day, we tried to stick with roughly the 16 hours. We actually were at 17 hours, and we didn't go through a lot of tickets. But no one was burnt out. Everyone walked out saying, hey, I did something. And that gets you somewhere. Next thing is, we had to look at the total number, and yeah, it's high, but we're working on it. And we actually made less work for tomorrow. I bought these guys dinner for this because it is something they don't get rewarded for, and it's almost the extra they do, when in reality, this is what we need to be doing. We need to be looking at, how do we make less work? So we actually put a cost there. And next day, still external, we keep going, we get down a little bit farther, and again, no rules updated, but we're going through them. And we actually have a cost. Next day, we still haven't met our goal on this one, but we're getting there. And we're getting close. We're still at that 16 hours. This is what management said we needed. And we actually get another rule update. And we're actually below cost. Oh, actually at cost in this one, but management loved us at that point. Day 4, we keep going. 2 more rules. We're still making it a better day. And here we're actually below cost. Management truly loved us that day. We weren't that secure, but we're actually handling the network. And day 5, we actually handle all of this. And we're within close network. Now we can start adding on another brick to the pile and actually work through this house. So post dig out, 2 weeks they hit a wall. No more rule updates, people working 20 plus hours, management's pissed, people are pissed, they're working too many hours, they're not getting paid enough, and 2 guys are threatening to quit, and 1 guy has lost the door. But nothing's being updated anymore. And what are we paying for? We're back to this. Crazy guy, big pile of money, everyone's angry. So where does this fall down? Here's where it falls down. we had no quality testing. We had no way of actually saying, where does the process actually need to be? Where does that need to be at? And the human checks in this allow people to actually prioritize. If you're running a help desk and you have 500 people call, do you have every person follow from beginning to end? No, you prioritize, you triage. Why aren't we doing this with IDSs? Why aren't we actually building in quality mechanisms? So, staying out of the hole, roughly about 2 weeks later, we start the day with about 300 alerts. And we're actually breaking it down to what we're doing. Level 1, it's a 5-minute look. If we get a bunch of 5-minute looks that look alike, okay, we'll do a rule update. Other than that, we don't care. Level 2, okay, we need to look into this, but we're really staying under the 2-hour mark. Level 3, holy cow, something's on fire. So we have our actual triage going. We have our actual ability to go, what is going wrong? And we actually find something. We found an active root that had been there for at least 6 months and probably 3 years. No one noticed it. Day 2, round 2. We're going to, again, we're still looking at a pretty high number of hours, but now we can justify it with management saying, we're finding stuff. Now you're more secure. And we found a system with a broken auto login. You know those employees that haven't been here for 9 months? Yeah, they auto logged in there and was crashing everything. Again, now things are actually running faster, better, and people are less frustrated. So round 2, again, getting closer. This is not a single step. This is a process along the way. And we're still finding things. But we're actually getting close to that goal. Manager's saying, hey, you're getting closer. Can we get there a little bit faster? But awesome, we're finding things. Once we hit this round 2, we actually have buy-in from management. Management is no longer sitting at sidelines like, oh dear God, they're burning our money. Because that's what a lot of management sees. And jumping ahead a little bit here, day 8, we're closer. Again, we're 40 minutes over. Found another sequel, unsanitized. They actually had to shut down a server. They were able to do this proactively to the point they gained customers by shutting off the service for a week. They were actually to get salespeople in the room and say, we have to shut off the server. We don't have a choice, but we're going to talk with our clients, and we're going to make sure they're covered by setting up an alternate path for them that meets the regulations they're under before we shut it off. They gained customer for it. They gained actually 3 customers in 3 weeks for that. And we're close. So, what did we learn? The payoff on this is 1, always follow the money. We are tracking a crime scene. Look at where are we starting from. If we start from the incident side, we are never going to follow that rabbit hole all the way down. Because it's just going to be a money you put your pit in, and there's going to be a sane guy at the bottom with a big pile of burning money. Number 2, be lazy. Do your job. Do what you need to do. Do everything that is required to make sure your coworkers can pay their mortgage. Because that's what we're here for. We're not here for ourselves. We're not here because we just like computers. We're here because if we mess up, someone loses a house. If we mess up, someone doesn't get to send their kid to college. That's the stakes we're playing for. But if we burn out week 1, we're done. And they're done too, unfortunately. So we have to make sure. So the lesson on that is, if your boss gives you 80 hours worth of work, do the right 40. Do the 40 so you can do equivalent of 60 the next week, and 80 the next week, and 100 the next week. And so your boss says, why are you taking a nap? And you can say, hey, everything's secure. You have a report on your desk, and your cost is down. And because every presentation requires a Sun Tzu quote, if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will suffer defeat in every battle. See, I follow protocol. I have the Sun Tzu. We do not get the luxury of choosing our opponents. We do not get the luxury of knowing everyone that's going to come at us. So we have to know our own environment to compensate. We have to know the tools at our fingertips. And most of all, this is bad. If you're crushing the infrastructure of your company and crushing yourself in the process, what is the point of security? Well, I'm just about a minute under, so I want to take just a few seconds to actually say thank you to Gavin and Felix and GrrCON, because though I had an angry PowerPoint for a second there, the part of this conference and a lot of conferences is to, hey, they have a good idea. Get them on stage. So if you have someone that has a good idea, tell them to stand up. And make sure they don't have angry PowerPoint presentation. So I just want to say thank you, and thank you much.